Hey guys, SkyHyper-V here. The title of this video is Crypto, How to Dump and Import Private Keys. Now before we look at private keys, let's talk a little bit about the wallet and what a wallet.dat file is. So when you first launch your B3 wallet or any other wallet, if it doesn't recognize a wallet.dat, it will create one, and what it does, it creates a default address for you. Now this address really is a one-to-one relationship or mapping between a private key and this key. So really what happens is you have a private key that has a public key created out of it, and then that public key, which is a long series of integers or digits, is then hashed to create something that's a little bit more recognizable, because it's hard to recognize these long series, right? As a human, it's hard, we're not really that good at remembering or recognizing these long series of patterns. So we hash that and we get these unique addresses, and this is your public address. Now inside the wallet.dat is a private key that controls the funds associated with this. So by this being a default address right now, there's no funds right now to control, but I still can control them when it does get funds. So anyone that sends coins to this address, as the possessor of the private key associated with this address, then can control the funds. Now, those funds can be controlled outside of this wallet, because remember, coins are not inside your wallet.dat. That's the misconception a lot of people have, is when they see a wallet.dat, they say, hey, my coins are not in my wallet.dat, or they have this understanding that, or misunderstanding that they think the coins are actually stored inside the wallet.dat. But you have to realize that coins are always in the blockchain, right? This peered network of consensus and understanding what transactions are in each block. The coins are actually stored in the blockchain. The wallet software is an interface into that blockchain from a viewing perspective. So if I had this public address, I can look up this address in Block Explorer and see how much funds are associated with this particular address. So in this case, you can see this is a brand new wallet, and the Block Explorer has no concept of this because there's never been an interaction with it. It doesn't even show a zero balance, because when this wallet loaded, it created this address, but because there've never been any spent funds to it from it, or no one's ever sent funds to it, Block Explorer has no concept of it. So again, a wallet.dat is just a collection of the private keys that control the addresses that the wallet is aware of, and that allows you to spend it. So the public key component allows you to view the funds in the address inside the blockchain, or send funds to it. You can receive on this address, but the only individual that is able to spend from it is the one that possesses the private key, and that private key right now is inside this wallet.dat. So once again, before we get into the actual working example, a public address, people can send funds to it, and you can view the balance in Explorer. In this case I mentioned, I can't view anything because it's a new address. The private key is going to allow me to control. So when I do send funds to this, those funds are going to be controlled by this wallet. If someone were to get a hold of my private key, they don't need this wallet. They can import the private key that they now have hacked or found and import it into their wallet and send those funds elsewhere. And we'll do a demonstration of that. So the question becomes, now that I have this wallet.dat, and if I have funds in this address or multiple addresses, how do I store and keep that key offline? When we're looking at crypto wallets, we're typically used to copying our wallet.dat, right? So the first thing we do is always encrypted. You can see I've already got my wallet encrypted. If I were to ever store my wallet, right, I would encrypt this using some software like 7-zip or something like that. So even though this is passphrased, you should also keep a copy of this offline on some USB drive and encrypt this further to make sure that it doesn't get, if it does get into the wrong hands, that no one will have an easy time decrypting it. Because this essentially has the private keys, the keys to your kingdom. But as we know, this wallet.dat is just a piece of software, right? This is a file on my computer. It can get deleted accidentally. It can be on a USB drive that gets corrupted. It could be on my system here that gets corrupted. So what is one foolproof way, or is another alternative to storing my funds access, right? Access to those funds offline. And that is what we're going to show today, is how to dump the private keys. And we're going to go through an exercise of re-importing them in the event that something bad happens to your wallet.dat. So first thing we're going to do is go to debug window, and we're going to type list address groupings. Now notice that I get no output here, even though I actually have an address in my wallet. The reason is that, similar to Block Explorer, my wallet has no concept of that address ever being used in a transaction. And that is in fact the case because I just loaded this wallet. So I'm going to send some funds to this, and then we'll rerun this command to show what the output looks like. Now I've sent some funds over to this address that I had earlier that was showing no listed address groupings from earlier. It was just blank. Now if I type list address groupings in debug window, you can see that I have 0.003, well, KB3, because new wallet supports KB3 or B3, and you can see my address associated with that. And you can see here in the dashboard that I have 3B3. Now I'm going to go and create a new address because I want to simulate what a typical wallet may look like with multiple addresses. So I'm going to create a new wallet, and I'm not going to worry about the label right now. And there I go, I have another address. Okay, now I'm going to type list address groupings again, and you can see that it doesn't show my other one because the Block Explorer, the blockchain, has no concept of that other address. It only knows about this one. So if I were to search for that address again, my original one in Block Explorer, I can see that I now have some transaction because I sent it some funds. But if I look for the new address, I don't have anything here. I'm going to go ahead and send some funds to this new address as well to populate both and show an example of how to restore. Okay, now I have two addresses here, and both of them have funds. You can recall I had B3 in one and 4 in the other. Now, one of the things that we can do is come into debug window again, and just to validate things, we're going to type get balance, and you can see that I have 0.007 KB3 is how it's representing it, which is the same as 7B3. If I now type list address groupings, now I see both of my addresses with their respective balances. So how do we go about backing up this wallet? Well, first thing is we can back up the wallet.dat. We know we always want to encrypt it, and then in addition to that, encrypt the file using 7-zip and then store it on some USB drive. But let's say that we need to have a offline copy, right? This is all software, as I mentioned. Wallet.dat is a software that can get corrupted. It's just a file. It can get deleted. A lot of things can happen from mishandling it. So we need to keep a backup copy of it. So let's go ahead and dump the private keys for the addresses. Now I've done the list address groupings, but I always like to do it fresh here every time I come in if I ever need to dump keys. I mentioned if you did this command earlier, right, we did this earlier in the video and we didn't get anything, is because there was no funds associated with it. There was no transaction. As soon as a transaction occurs around the address, it will show up here in the list address groupings. Now, what I'm about to do next is I'm going to do a dump private key, and I'm going to paste let's go and paste the first address. And you typically want to do this in a very private environment, right? I'm doing this on YouTube just because I have very little funds here. I'm going to trash this wallet anyway, so I don't really care if people see the private key or get access to it. But you do not ever want somebody to see, don't ever screen share this, don't ever share your private key, because the moment somebody has access to that, it doesn't matter how long your passphrase is, how you encrypted your wallet.dat, the private key can be imported into another wallet from another individual, and then your funds would then be controlled by that private key, and then they would proceed to move those funds to another wallet or another address that they control, and you have effectively lost your funds. So I'm going to run this right on screen here, and you can see that says please enter wallet passphrase, right? This command requires that the wallet be fully unlocked. So I'm going to hit unlock, and I'm going to uncheck staking only, because staking only is more of a preliminary unlocking, and it doesn't fully unlock the wallet for those privilege type commands. So let's go and fully unlock it. Now I'm going to go back to debug window, and I'm going to type dumpprivkey, and I'm going to copy my address, and I'm going to paste it here. This is my private key. If this were to ever get out, which it has now on YouTube, somebody can import this key and get access to those 3B3 and then send that off to somewhere else, and now they're a little bit richer. So I'm going to copy the other one as well, because I want to keep a list of both of them. I'm going to do dump private key again, and I'm going to store these in my notepad for the time being. Now what you could do with these private keys, you could print them out, laminate them, store them somewhere safe in an actual safe or some PO box, or whatever secure method you feel you're comfortable with, and then hit Control L or Command L to clear the screen. And now I've saved those private keys in a notepad, and I can print them and essentially have a backup in case my wallet ever gets corrupted. Now, we have a wallet that's fully functional. We have private keys that we've dumped and printed and stored offline. Now let's imagine that something were to happen to our wallet.dat. So let's simulate this. I'm going to close my wallet. I've closed my wallet, and I'm going to pretend that this wallet.dat, which has my 2 addresses with the funds in them, imagine that this is corrupted. So for the purposes of this video, I'm not going to delete it. And again, you should never ever delete your wallet.dat that's fully functional. This is just for the purpose of the video to show what you would do now if the wallet were to be corrupted. So I'm just going to call this wallet.corrupt so that it kind of stays out of my way. Notice I have no wallet.dat, right? Imagine, again, this is a simulation of what do you do now that your wallet.dat has been corrupted. You have funds, you have 2 addresses with funds in them, but your wallet.dat is corrupt and you have no access to them. What can you do? Well, rename or move that file out of the way, and let's relaunch the wallet so that it creates a new wallet.dat. So if I go in here now, you can see I have a new wallet.dat. If I go to a receive screen, I have a new address. I don't care about this address. I'm just going to call it zignore, because it's going to go to the bottom of the list as my new addresses get populated in here in a minute. I don't care about this address. This is just an address that the wallet had to create when it first launched, because it doesn't presume to know what you're going to do. It just knows that this is a new wallet launch, and it has to create a new address so that you can start sending funds to this if you want. But we're trying to restore. The other thing you have to realize is that since we created a new wallet, the passphrase is also gone. So you can see that I don't have it encrypted. So you should encrypt your wallet. So let's go and do that. And it's going to shut down. And we're going to go ahead and relaunch it. You can see I have 0 balance. One of the things I do want to mention is that most wallets will start out of sync, because even though I was on the latest block, until it finds the next block, it won't show in sync. So that doesn't mean that you're technically out of sync. Okay, that's just, a lot of people think they're out of sync or they're on the wrong chain because they just launched their wallet and it shows out of sync. Just wait for the next block and that will get resolved. Now recall that I have this address that I don't really care about because it's a default wallet, right? I created a fresh wallet.dat because my other one is corrupted, remember, right? This is our simulation. We have a wallet that's corrupted, and now I need access to those funds. So let's go and fully unlock our wallet, because remember we encrypted it, because we're going to have to run commands that are going to need a privileged access. I'm going to go to help debug console. This is our debug console, and I'm going to do import private key. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to type help here to show you what the full command looks like. Import private key, then you're going to paste your private key. You can have a label, and then you can say rescan equals true. So let's go ahead and run this command. We're going to type import private key, and I'm going to copy my first address key, right? Not the public address, but the key that was dumped earlier. And I'm going to label this main1, and I'm going to say true. So this is import priv key space my key, which is a private key, space some label I want to create, and don't put spaces in the label. You could quote it if you have spaces in there, and then space true. That will tell it that I want to rescan that key. So that's going to run for a minute. This process is CPU intensive because it does some math in the background. So it's going to take a minute to run. Now I'm going to type the second command, import private key, and I'm going to call this guy main2 and true. So you can see when you get this next prompt, that means that it imported that key. Now this key hasn't been imported yet because we're not seeing the next prompt, so we have to wait for that. Now that we have that, we can come over here and close our wallet, relaunch it, and we go to receive screen. There we go. We have main1 and main2 that we labeled. There's our public addresses again. And if you go to our dashboard, there's our 7B3. And I'm going to actually I can type the command without having to unlock it because these are not privileged commands. If I type get balance, you can see I have my 7B3 or 0.007KB3. And if I type list address groupings, I now have control over those funds using this, even though that this wallet was freshly created with this kind of dummy address, which I'm never going to use. That's why I like to label as zignore, so that falls to the bottom always, alphabetically. And then now I have my two addresses, and there's no easy way to get rid of this key from this wallet because it was created. There's some scripts online, some Python scripts that do that. I don't really like to touch that. This is not too much trouble for me to just kind of leave alone. So you can see that now all my funds are accessible. If I were to only import the one key and forget about the second key, then I would only have access to the funds, the 3B3, from this address. But because I imported both of them, I now have access to, and I can spend from, and even my transactions will show up. And you can see this one's still confirming because I had sent them recently. So once again, private keys are the keys to the kingdom. Whether you have your wallet passphrased or not, if you lose the private key, someone can import the key into their own wallet and spend your funds. And that means that they can send to another address that they control, and you've effectively lost control of your wallet and your funds. So as a precaution, back up your wallet.dat because it's the collection of your keys. Passphrase it, right? Encrypt it. On top of that, encrypt it with 7-zip, some OS level or file system level encryption utility as a double measure, and save that offline. That's your first step as a backup solution. And then also dump your private keys as we showed in here, because if that software solution fails, and it will, you at least have a hard copy to rely on. That's it for this video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave some comments below. I hope to hear from you. Sky Hyper V, thank you.